Last time on Epic 7 Abridged, Ras and Co., due to a couple detours, were too late to stop Vildred from absorbing the Archdemon's might. Now holding the power of two Archdemon might, Arby was able to defeat Ras in a 1v1. However, Mercedes let herself be captured in his place. Now, Ras, Arky, Iseria, and Yuna head towards one of the last two sanctums, Dusselnork's lunar cemetery, in order to prevent Vildred from absorbing even more Archdemon's mights. Meanwhile, the leadership of Ezra are facing difficulties working with the Fountain of Tears sanctum located in Terranor, with the Terranor king stating foreign soldiers will not be stationed in their territory, and they will protect the sanctum with their own military might. They also reveal that Ras may run into a similar problem in Dusselnork, because his protector has locked himself inside of the cemetery, and they have therefore been unable to contact him. With Mercedes captured, it's Iseria's job to recognize traces of dark magic, which he does, and speculates that an acolyte must have been here recently. With Snebria and Nilgal out of commission, Ras deduces it must be Charon, and they rush off to stop him, because although he is deadly, what's more deadly is his silver tongue, getting both Vildred and the Church of Ilrius to dance in the palm of his hand. Once again, they get lost. However, Iseria and Yuna say it's not Ras's fault for once, with the Nocturnes putting a strong illusion over the lunar cemetery to protect unwanted visitors. As they look for a device that will allow them in, the devil incarnate, an evil scammer, runs towards them, being chased by a horde of monsters. This evil being introduces himself as the merchant Yush, and having not heard of his ridiculous prices, the party saves him. Yush says he's here because he heard that Ras would be in Dusselnork, and realizing Ras would likely not know how to enter the lunar cemetery, so sensing a profit, he came running. What a scammer. However, it's not all bad. Instead of robbing them of their skystones, Yush just asks that they'll remember this when he establishes his merchant emporium. They agree, so Yush takes them to the lunar cemetery. As they travel, they walk through the ruins of Nocturne villages, now completely uninhabited, because the entire Nocturne race sacrificed their lives to bind the Archdemon. Something that would normally be impossible without Ras, the heir of the Covenant. Yush then loots the village and finds a Nocturne talisman and a barrier stone, which in conjunction can be used to reveal the path to the lunar cemetery. As they enter, Ludwig notices someone is approaching. A mysterious voice says, "It must be the heir of the Covenant," and asks Ludwig if he intends on helping him. Ludwig curtly tells him no, saying he has no intention of helping Ras. As they travel through the cemetery, they are attacked by monsters, which Yuna notices are much stronger than the average monster. Iseria states that the lone protector of the lunar cemetery, Ludwig, has been able to defend it using these monsters, and reveals that one Nocturne survived, for he was locked in the cemetery to protect him, while the other, Shinzo Wasasakio, and since being locked in the cemetery, has not left it. Ras reveals that Kisei, an heir of Epic 6, was always worried about Ludwig, and gave Ras a message to deliver shortly before she died, if she were unable to give him this message herself. So he hopes that he'll finally be able to deliver this message. Anyways, now that Yush has taken them to the lunar cemetery, he departs while Ras and the others continue onwards. As they enter, they see countless tombstones, each covered in the Nocturne's amulets, something Iseria realizes Ludwig must have done. Yuna wonders what in the world is wrong with Ludwig, wondering why he's bolstering his pain by trapping himself in a place that isolates him and will only make him feel worse. Iseria states that it may be because he has nowhere else to go, and that this pain he's forcing himself to endure is his way of remembering the people he's lost. Ras becomes lost in thoughts, all alone. If you get that reference, you're a real one. And says Ludwig may be staying here because he's dedicated the rest of his life to protecting the barrier binding the Archdemon's might, to make up for the fact that he's the only one still alive, while his clan sacrificed themselves. Ludwig, deeper in the cemetery, notices them, and despite being alone, screams that Ras is too late. He should have come before everything he's ever known and loved has died, before he destroyed the Sanctum's barrier. And then we flash back. The morning after the Nocturnes have sacrificed himself, Ludwig finds the amulets of all the Nocturnes and realizes they must have left him behind to bind the Archdemon and subsequently died. Ludwig, realizing he has nothing to protect anymore, dispels the barrier. Wow. Not even an entire day after their sacrifice and Ludwig's already undoing it all. Intending on dying to the release of the destructive might of the Archdemon's power. However, seconds pass, then minutes, and Ludwig realizes, hey, wait a moment, I'm still alive. Suddenly, a voice calls out to him, asking him if he's come to his senses. And this voice is Chromecuz, Kisei's guardian and pet dragon from Epic 6. Not wanting Ludwig to die, the dragon sacrificed his body to create a replacement barrier around the Archdemon's might. Meanwhile, back in the present, the party finally finds Ludwig, and Yuna is surprised that he looks like a literal 10-year-old. Aziria says that this is because Nocturnes, upon receiving their blessing rites, stop aging. Ludwig is having none of this and tells them to leave. He then turns his back on them and storms off. Aziria and Yuna tell them he has to lower the barrier because it's his duty, which angers Ludwig. Angry that they speak of duty when Ras couldn't even fulfill his duty and stop his people from dying. But the main reason Ludwig refuses to lower this barrier is because Chromecuz will disappear if he dispels it. Chromecuz tells him mentally that he wasn't really meant to be a barrier, for he is a dragon. So even if the barrier isn't dispelled, he'll eventually disappear. Ludwig asks why he even protected the sanctum, saying he wanted to leave the responsibilities of the Nocturnes behind, and Chromecuz tells him that he doesn't need to take up these duties. Walk the path you choose and live the life you want to live, and tells him that this was the main reason Kisei became an heir, to give Ludwig a life of freedom. Now, you may be wondering how Ludwig is even able to remember Kisei, since she was an heir and thus ceased to exist after the world reset. And honestly, the answer is, it's a bit vague. Since Kisei, despite not being able to exist in Epic 7, still impacted it. More on that later. Thus, the simplest answer I could come up with is that the memories of Nocturnes exist across the timeline resets. Ras tries to get him to stop, saying he has a message for Ludwig, but Ludwig yells at him, telling him to leave. Suddenly, Kayron shows up and grabs Ludwig while his forces hold Ras and Co off. Kayron tells Ludwig to give him the Archdemon's might, but Ludwig says he's staying out of this conflict. Kayron says that not giving him the Archdemon's might is equivalent to aiding Ras, and starts beating Ludwig up. Chromecuz tells Ludwig to lower the barrier, because he doesn't want any more people he cares about to die. As Kayron continues beating up Ludwig, he yells out, "No, I can't lose you as well." And that's all Kayron needs to hear, realizing Chromecuz has become the barrier holding back the Archdemon's might, and a barrier created by a guardian. In his words, it's child's play to destroy. The party finds a bloodied and beaten Ludwig, and he begs them to help him. They agree, and Ludwig apologizes for his treatment of them, and tells them the truth about the barrier. Ras promises that since Guardians are also creations of Daichi, the power of creation invested within him should be able to restore Chromecuz. Thanks to Ludwig's expertise, they arrive at the barrier before Kayron, and Ras tells them to protect him while he works on restoring the dragon's body. Kayron finally arrives with this army of undead, and the party are slowly overwhelmed. Kayron tries to convince Ludwig to switch sides, saying to forget his past regrets and become one of his undead soldiers. However, Ludwig remembers the motto of the Nocturne clan and tells Kayron, "It's the duty of the Nocturnes to protect the ones dear to you with your life, and right now, I will protect the last person I care about until I die," saying the anguish and despair he feels is why he can't abandon everything and begin a new life, because from the day he met them to the day they parted, the memories he shared with his family is as precious as they are painful. So even if he loses Chromecuz, he will do everything he can to protect him. And Chromecuz says, "And I shall help you," and makes Ludwig an heir, with Ras finally having restored Chromecuz's body. Ras then strikes to kill Kayron, but realizing the battle is lost, he teleports away. Ras finally gives Ludwig Kisei's message, saying she told him to forget the Nocturnes and live his own life. We will shoulder the clan's duties. You, Ludwig, just live your life as freely as the radiant dawn. Ludwig says, "Okay, I choose you, Ras," saying that he and Chromecuz will help him in their endeavor to stop Vildred and Kayron, saying he wants to ensure the Nocturne sacrifice wasn't in vain, and to be with his friend. Ras starts blushing, embarrassed that Ludwig referred to him as a friend. However, Ludwig tells him, "No, you idiot, I was talking about Chromecuz. You still have a long way to becoming my friend, but baka," and also tells Ras he better start taking responsibility for his newfound mission. Ras then absorbs the Archdemon's might held in the lunar cemetery, and Ludwig gives his final farewells to his fallen clan as they head towards the last sanctum held in Terranor. After credit scene! Before they leave, Ludwig wants to visit a lake that Aziria says is always lit by moonlight, and the mirror of Lunaris, which grants the wish of all those who see it. Suddenly, a figure that Ras mistakes for Ruel appears. Ras calls out her name, confusing the party since, besides Kisei, heirs that die don't exist after a timeline reset. This lookalike reveals that she isn't Ruel, but is instead the Spirit Lord Destina, Lord of Light. This shocks Azeria, having never heard of a Spirit Lord taking on a human form. Destina says that most don't, but Ruel was very special to her. She wasn't like other girls, and upon her death, Destina, drowned in sorrow, adopted her appearance to help cope with the loss. This story reminds Ludwig of something Kisei used to tell him, saying that this lake allowed people to meet people they missed through the reflection of the full moon. And facing this reflection will help overcome the loss of this person. Archie is surprised that Kisei missed someone outside of the Nocturnes, and Ludwig tells him that he never learned who this person was, but he did know it was someone from Terranor. Ras wonders why he was so ready to accept the fact that Ruel has returned even though it was impossible, and comes to the conclusion that similarly to Destina, he still hasn't come to terms with the death of his friends, making him realize that all this interaction with humans across so many timelines, higher beings like him and Destina are slowly becoming more human. And on that note, that's all for this week's episode. Stick around as next time, Ras and the other heirs are going to team up with the final heir, Crow, to overthrow a country.